Hey team, good morning. Caleb here, dropping in to deliver some value. So yesterday I promised that I would go live on a conversation that I had with SI Energy. So without going into too much content about the actual person and their problem, I want to deconstruct the code of you from the code for you from a behavioral point of view, so that ultimately you can start recognizing the little nuances that will give you that little hint or that intuition in your brain where you go, okay, cool, so I'm dealing with a kinesthetic S energy here, or I'm dealing with a future orientated feeling based I energy, or I'm dealing with a very direct visionary future D energy, or a C past assurance based detail orientated. So for the purposes of this conversation, let me know what you're struggling with at the moment when it comes to recognizing the disc energies. But what I want to do is just want to unpack my thinking as to how I managed to profile so quickly who I was dealing with, the little things that I noticed, the little nuances that they're kind of unconsciously competent now, so if I share them with you while they're fresh, then you can receive the value from that. So ultimately the problem that this is going to solve for you is the ability to adjust your sales style according to the energy. So what do I mean by that specifically? Each energy, as you're well aware, has a different buying strategy, has a different communication strategy. They're driven by different things. What they're after is different. So you want to be able to recognize that quickly so you can speak their language, light them up, and make sure that you get that deep rapport whereby you get seen as a trusted expert. And this works on the premise of, if you can language what my problem is before I know what it is, then I trust you. So I'll say it again. If I can language what your problem is before you can, if I can prescribe you what the problem is, you'll trust me. That's the psychology behind this. So knowing your customer this deeply provides immense value. So let's look at, so the start of the conversation opened up, and one of the first things was, so if you're familiar, the start of the conversation is say, how you going? And so from this one question, I knew a lot of information that I wouldn't have been able to pick up otherwise. So if we look through the filter of what do they value, what's their intensity, and what are they focused on, the very first thing I heard was a deep breath in. So when I was talking, so hey, how are you, what's going on right now, it was a now for most people they will miss that. But here's why this is important. This falls under our intensity category. What is their energy like? So this person just took a deep breath in before speaking. That's huge. So essentially, the breathing in, the long labored breath, is a feeling modality. They are feeling the words that they're about to say. So automatically we cut out any logical energy, because the person's just taken a massive deep breath. Now we listen for what comes next. And we could notice that in the client that the voice started choking up. So there was emotion there. The voice started choking up, and you could tell in the face, the facial muscles started presenting some kind of change, in the sense that it was, you could tell that there was going to be emotion there. So what we have now, the evidence that we have, is deep breath plus choking up of the voice, which suggests the emotion is hard to deal with, which means this energy has a lot of kinesthetic going on. And when we think about the S versus the I energy is likely to be very positive, very future-based. The S energy is not so much. They're likely to sit in their pain for a while and wear it. And so when asked, and when the attention is put onto them because they take care of everybody else, S energy is the caretaker, they take care of everyone else, they never have the opportunity to talk about them. And then when they're given the opportunity to talk about them, they relish it. They think it's amazing, it's beautiful, it's fantastic. So this is what I noticed with that S energy was that when I asked how they were, the emotion flooded, because they're like, okay, I'm putting me first now. This hasn't happened for a while. So that was one of the very first things I noticed, and from there I basically pieced together the puzzle that I'm dealing with an S energy. So if you've seen the class on DISC, now we kind of know what the outcome is that they're looking for, and we know what the problem is. And the problem is, from a DISC point, from a cognitive dissonance point of view, We've got someone who's going to be really good at the emotion of now, but will struggle with the logical consequences. And we've got someone who's really good at the emotion future, because they're also I energy, but they'll struggle with the logic of the future. So how did I get to I energy? So I trust you know how we've ticked off S. It seems pretty simple. Now the I energy was mainly because the kinesthetic in this conversation, the emotion in this conversation was so heavy that there wasn't room for much logic. Yeah, there was no kind of defensiveness from the C energy, which pulled itself back and felt bad for being vulnerable. And there was no cutting off and shortening like a D energy would. There wasn't any minimizing or saying how it could be better. There was still some laughs. Yeah, so there was still some fun. The energy was, as well, it was intense emotional pain, but there was also fun in it. So there was a little bit of laughter. There was some jokes. There was some smiles. Yeah, right. Anything else I need to add there? So that's how I started positioning the I energy. But the main giveaway was how kinesthetic the client was. So if the client was slightly less kinesthetic, then the things that we would notice would be perhaps they became defensive. So they did it and then they pulled themselves back and they're like, oh, sorry, that's a bit much. So if they started to minimize their emotion, now we're starting to see some logic going, you can't be that emotional, be careful, you can't trust people. That would suggest some more logic. But however, none of that happened. So that's it. So this energy was essentially ran a meta filter called matching. They wanted to match with me. They wanted to be on the same page with me. There was no mismatch at all. It was where we were straight in rapport right away. Now that is a very kinesthetic SI, because the drivers are connection focused. So you have a connection focused energy who's kinesthetic, who likes to dream about the future and experiences a lot of emotional pain of now with no ability to think logically under pressure, then you've effectively understanding how we can position it that way. My hair is just sticking up all over the place. So going through the conversation, now we know what's important to this energy, right? So from a code perspective, we know they're not going to do the logic. So all we need to look at is what is the emotional problem of now and the emotional problem of future, and then prescribe some logical implications to complete the code. I trust this makes sense. So, and if it doesn't make sense, jump on the course, look at the code from a desk point of view. For the newbies in the group, you're gonna start understanding what we mean by this slightly more very, very, very shortly. So, so what else did I notice? So from a structural point of view, this is what we call education to pitch. So most of you, in the video that we did last week, was educating around how do you position your services after a value session. So the way that this client was an inbound lead, so they're familiar with my brand, they came, can we have a chat? And then effectively what happened was inbound lead, book a chat, and then I said, okay, cool, so let's just talk about a little bit about what's going on for you. So this is what we call an education pitch. So what I was doing, I was prescribing, or I was mind reading the client's problems, and then demonstrating why it's important to solve those problems. So I'll give you an example. So it's the triad of self-esteem. So the triad of so effectively, have you ever doubted yourself, or do you feel like you're self-sabotaging, or do you feel like you're just holding yourself back on some level? So this is mind reading a problem, and then we go, now it's important because if that's happening, we don't have an inner sense of self, which is made up of emotion, needs, and boundaries, and blah 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 blah, so on so forth. So effectively what happens is we build trust by mind reading the problem in the education pitch conversation. We build trust by mind reading the problem, and then we explain why it's important to have the problem solved. So that's how we got into that, and then it got to a point where I was ready to let the person go, and they started saying, so what are the next steps? So this is really cool. This is where you can now do the permission frame, where you say along the lines of, is it cool if we talk about options? And if they say yes, fantastic. Now here you need to calibrate Have they had too much of an emotional experience? Do they need some time, or are they genuinely curious to talk next steps? You're going to know that balance. It's kind of an intuitive thing. So, yeah. So the permission frame, and then into the code. So at this part of the code, most salespeople, most coaches like to assume the sale. You can't. Just because someone has an emotional cognitive dissonance, you need to build in the logic. So we started building a logical cognitive dissonance, or logical gap, about revenue now, like how it's affecting other areas right now versus revenue future, family future. Because what I'm also doing here is I'm building a logical contrast frame. Logical contrast frame is to figure out what their goal is and create a number that's bigger than the investment. So it desensitizes your investment number versus their goal. That's kind of what you're doing with the logical contrast frame. And so then it's kind of like you're just building the cognitive dissonance out so that they feel like it's enough of a problem to act on, so that you can solve it for them. And again, you only do this if you know that you solve this problem for somebody. And this is the beauty of it, is I know I solved this specific problem really, really powerfully and really congruently. So my mindset when approaching this is I will do anything to make sure that we work together. If you have to leave this call and go somewhere else to solve this problem, then me as a salesperson, me as a coach, has failed that client. And that's kind of the ferociousness, or the standard, or the mindset I see is, if you have this problem of self-sabotage, self-doubt, you feel misaligned from your purpose, you're procrastinating, you're playing a small game, if you're experiencing that and we chat, then I must insist that we work together. And I will do everything. I'll use all the skills, everything that I have, in order to make sure that there is no reason why this does not make congruent sense to you in your mind. Yeah? So it's still your decision, and the only reason why the sale wouldn't exist is because if I didn't give you enough logic of now or logic of future. So this is the mindset that you want to bring to your clients, is you really truly want to believe that you solve their problem. And they will pick up on that inner certainty that you have. And this comes from this place of just curiosity and care, because I know how much change I can make. Same with you in your business. When you work on one specific problem and you get good at the specific problem, you'll be able to understand how much change you can actually create for that person. So it's really important that you serve them, because you can't guarantee that if they go somewhere down the track that the service is going to be the same, that the coach is going to be as dedicated, that the coach is going to be as passionate, that the coach is going to essentially care as much as you do. So it's vitally important that this person becomes your client if it's the problem that you solve. I trust this makes sense, guys. And this is where sales turns from an obligation to utmost service. As if you don't help that person solve that problem, they're going to spend the next 6 weeks, 6 months, 6 years experiencing the pain of having that problem not solved. And that will not fucking happen on my watch. I won't let you experience that. And this is, I don't know, let me know if this is valuable, but this is what goes on in my head. Like, this is what I think when I'm in a sales conversation. And I know it's a bit wanky. I don't like talking about myself too much. So if this is valuable, can you comment and let me know? If it's not valuable, I'll stop talking about me. Because I'm just here to serve you guys. So that'd be great. It'd be super helpful if you can do that. So the next part of this is, so now we look at buying strategy. So with the SI energy, you could close on the spot. Yeah, so maybe not. So the S energy primarily has what we call a period of time convincer. The I energy is automatic convincer. So in the sales conversation, I would say the client leads with S first and then I second, which effectively means that the period of time is driving their decision. So they're going to start freaking out as soon as you get close to the close. Whereas the I energy is already sold. So they got a little whisper inside saying, you should do this, you should do this, you should do this. But then the S energy is freaking the fuck out. Like, it needs a lot of certainty that this is going to work. So what you want to do in this instance is to give them the time, but you don't give them you don't give them weeks. You give them just enough time for them to feel through, to sleep on it, to know that whatever happens, it's okay. And it's at this point you just send them away, and then you set up another time, which is frame control. So you go, so when am I going to call you next? So I've still got the frame. So I'm going to call. When am I going to call you next? Should we say tomorrow morning? So tomorrow morning, when you set all that kind of stuff, yeah. So, yeah. So that was the frame control, and then the sending away, because S energy. Yeah, and then thinking about, you know, why is it important that they buy? For S energies, it's often for family. I energies, it's about freedom. You can also consider masculine and feminine energy here for most. You know, it's either about legacy and purpose, or it's just about connection. So you can do a little bit of mind reading there, and just you try it on. So what I mean by that is, you know, so this is what I'd say. Clients in your position have described this feeling as. Does that resonate? So what you're doing is you're not telling them. You're saying clients, which is third party. Clients in your position. I think I covered this before. Clients in your position have described this feeling as. So it's effectively, it's outside of us. So the idea sits out here. And then we go, clients in this position have described that feeling as, and they go, yeah, it is that feeling, and they bring it in. So you've prescribed a feeling outwards, and they bring it in. So that's how you can prescribe some pain or some pleasure. I think that's about it, really. It's more just explaining the code and how I go through the code with you guys, and I think this might be a really cool series, where we just like the different energies I can break down. Fingers crossed I get a C energy, and I'll break down the C energy sale, because then we would have had D, S, C, and maybe an I. So if you know any I's, send them my way. But I trust this was valuable, team. Thank you so much for tuning in. We'll see you. Bye bye.